welcome to another Garry's Mod and Half-Life 2 / Combine lore video. And in this video, I will be taking a look at some of the Breencasts. We are on City 17 Transit Block map by Rayleigh SV, and I will provide some of my own commentary and opinions and explanation of what Dr. Breen talks about in the Breencast, and try to frame it and explain it in my own words. And also I will provide an explanation for why he is in fact right, and perhaps from where he is or what the stuff he's talking about is based on, and or what his claims are based on, essentially the Combine's cause as well. And yes, I will do just about that. And I will, once again, as I said, provide my own commentary and why I agree with them, and why you should too, or at least try to understand them. So I will turn the Breencast on here. I'll go cover this terminal.
Let me read a letter I recently received. Dear Dr. Breen, why has the Combine seen fit to suppress our reproductive cycle? Sincerely, a concerned citizen.
Let me get a gun.
Thank you for writing. Concerned. Of course, your question touches on one of the basic biological impulses, with all its associated hopes and fears for the future of the species.
So already, as you can see, Dr. Breen basically says he received a letter from a so-called concerned citizen, which asks him why has the Combine suppressed the human reproductive cycle, or what gives them the right, so to speak, to suppress human reproduction, to deploy the suppression field, which, as Kleiner explains in Half-Life 2, basically what it does, it prevents the formation of certain protein chains. I'm no scientist, no biologist, I'm not really sure what exact kind of stuff, but it basically prevents the formation of certain protein chains to develop like the fetus, the embryo, right? And the question is coming from clearly a citizen that does not exactly perhaps agree with the Combine's cause, or doesn't really know the answer for, or the reason for why they would do that. And basically his concern, since he calls himself a concerned citizen, clearly comes from the standard biological impulse to reproduce, or rather the suppression or the inability to fulfill this biological impulse, instinct, whatever you call it.
I also detect some unspoken questions. Do our benefactors really know what's best for us? What gives them the right to make this kind of decision for mankind? Will they ever deactivate the suppression field and let us breed again? Allow me to address the anxieties underlying your concerns, rather than try to answer every possible question you might have left unvoiced.
Yeah, so here Dr. Breen basically says that he also thinks there are some unspoken questions or concerns below the main question, or the surface of the question, which was why did the Combine suppress breeding, stuff like that.
First, let us consider the fact that for the first time ever, as a species, immortality is in our reach.
So, actually, let's continue.
This simple fact has far-reaching implications. It requires...
I'll provide my commentary on the bigger block of in just this one sentence.
Radical rethinking and revision of our genetic imperatives. It also requires planning and forethought that run in direct opposition to our neural presets.
Yeah, so here Dr. Breen says that these changes, or the goals that Combine is trying to achieve, basically clash directly with human instincts, right? They really go against the primitive biological programming. As Dr. Breen says, immortality is in our reach, which most likely has something to do with the transhumanism, although transhumans are immortal, but it could refer to some other operations of the Combine or goals that the Combine is trying to achieve via the human body.
I find it helpful at times like these to remind myself that our true enemy is instinct.
And here it says it. Our true enemy is instinct. And I would say that is actually completely correct, and let me explain why. So, the way biology works, it basically works on complete predictability and programmed behavior. Because biological organisms, in order for them to survive, they need to possess a sort of a toolkit of pre-programmed behavior, like behaviors that all organisms resort to because subconsciously, because it is directly programmed into whatever they used to think. And humans are no different. And obviously, since reproduction is considered the most important goal of every species in order to avoid extinction, it is also deeply embedded and programmed into every species' brains, basically, with, as I said, humans being no different. And when humans subjectively, usually through pure anthropocentric lens, perceive that something could potentially threaten their chance to reproduce, they react extremely defensively, irrationally, aggressively, without actually analyzing the logic or the underlying motives which could, be even for their own benefit. I mean, when you look at what the Combine, or the Combine's goal is, it is to basically obviously expand their own territory and their own military force, but this is a double win for both sides. First of all, the Combine expands their own territory or military force, but it also gives humans a clear and much better purpose, because right now our purpose is pretty much zero. We just reproduce and exist and waste resources, and that's really it. That's all we do. But if we are assimilated successfully into the Combine Union, the Universal Union, we are given a clear purpose of being part of something much greater and serving that greater good, serving something that has clear purpose, which is to unite all, or at least most of the observable universe species, and like across even several dimensions, because the Combine operates across multiple dimensions, and to basically have a sort of symbiosis, you can call it that. Well, anyways, that's basically it. But to look under, or like to look like under all of it and go back to the main question, or the main topic, which was instinct. Instinct basically cripples us to act on primitive impulses and behaviors, which means that it basically prevents us from actually ascending any further, ascending into a greater, more productive state of being and really leaves us completely crippled and vulnerable.
Instinct was our mother when we were an infant species.
This basically references that instinct is what helped us to survive in like the early days during evolution. At least that is how I understand it.
Instinct coddled us and kept us safe in those hardscrabble years when we hardened our sticks and cooked our first meals above a meager fire and started at the shadows that leapt upon the cavern's wall.
Ditto.
But inseparable from instinct is its dark twin, superstition. Instinct is inextricably bound to unreasoning impulses.
This is basically what I was talking about. It is bound to unreasoning impulses, which means that it causes these species to act in irrational ways, to engage in superstition, as Dr. Breen said, to refuse to really see like the flip side of things, like the other side of the coin,
And today we clearly see it's true.
Regardless of how logical it is, instinct will never really let you or want you to see the logic, because the nature doesn't operate on logic. Nature operates purely on predictability and scripted behaviors. We're basically slaves of nature at this point.
Nature. Instinct has just become aware of its irrelevance. And like a cornered beast, it will not go down without a bloody fight.
So this is what Dr. Breen says, right? It will not go down without a bloody fight, meaning the species will not really give up the irrational, destructive behaviors, because it is deeply embedded into them to preserve the instinct, preserve themselves as they currently are in the feudal, vulnerable state.
Instinct would inflict a fatal injury on our species. Instinct creates its own oppressors.
So, it would inflict a fatal injury on our species. I would say this is actually a really important line, because what it means that, it means what I already said, instinct essentially cripples the species mentally. I mean, it will not allow you to do any logical reasoning or thinking. It will just force you to do how the completely outdated, like nature's way of doing it, it will force you to do that, because instincts were another very important addition. And I would say that Dr. Breen essentially mentions this as well. Maybe he already did, maybe he will, I don't know. Instinct, well, yes, he already did mention it when he was talking about the caverns and stuff like that. Yes. So, to put it simply, instinct was made for primates that were living in savannas, and they just had to hunt and reproduce to keep the species. But since we evolved, those instincts are no longer necessary. And it just causes the species to stagnate.
And bids us rise up against them. Instinct tells us that the unknown is a threat rather than an opportunity.
Yes, this is also very true. It tells us it causes us to be afraid of, completely unlogically, unfoundedly afraid of any change, regardless of how beneficial or positive it would be for the species. If any sort of action or movement is not part of the primitive programming, is not even, you don't even think about it. It's literally burned into your brain's architecture, it completely prevents the species from any sort of other evolution, like evolution, or evolutionary steps or anything like that. It kind of causes you to be as you are because that's the safe default state, and nature is too afraid of experimenting or taking unpredictable yet, or kind of gamble, but positive gamble, options. So, or this is not even gamble we're talking about. I mean, this is completely logically sound thing that the Combine is trying to get us to achieve, but the instinct just doesn't really allow us to, because it is not part of our default programming.
Instinct slyly and covertly compels us away from change and progress.
Exactly, so here he says instinct basically relies on millions of years old, completely outdated algorithms that are no longer relevant at all.
Instinct, therefore, must be expunged. It must be fought tooth and nail, beginning with the basest of human urges, the urge to reproduce.
That is true because reproduction is essentially the absolute priority of every instinctive subconscious behavior, and it has to directly do with preservation of the species, to prevent them from going extinct. But there's literally no danger of going extinct under the Combine's rule, because the Combine can easily even synthetically produce humans, or that is if they had built an infrastructure to which I would say they could easily, besides they have billions of adult humans, viable for transhuman conversions, into the transhuman arm and so on. So there is actually no danger of going extinct, I would say. And essentially the Combine would build infrastructure to synthetically produce humans, because you need to realize how extremely powerful the Universal Union is. And after some time they would have perfected and built the technological means of synthetic human production. So there's no reason to fear going extinct, because the species will not go extinct. They will just be produced via different means other than fucking each other. If you know what I mean. If I have to put it bluntly, fucking each other, yes.
We should thank our benefactors for giving us respite from this overpowering force. They have thrown a switch.
Here, Dr. Breen mentions that we should be thankful for the Combine to give us a chance to break free from this destructive kind of self-feedback or feedback loop, and also destructive stagnation.
And exercised our demons.
That would prevent us from really achieving our true potential, I would say.
In a single stroke. They have given us the strength we never could have summoned to overcome this compulsion.
Exactly. They have given us the helping hands to overcome it.
They have given us purpose.
Purpose. I already mentioned this at the start of the video. Humans are generally purposeless, like on the universal scale. If you would look at humanity from the perspective of a third party, such as the Combine in this case, what purpose do we serve here on the planet? Nothing. We are not helping the universe with anything. I mean, we're here on our little dirt and stone ball, sphere, just depleting resources, killing each other for literally no fucking reason, and refusing to make any sort of cosmic progress or scale progress and serve a greater cause. And I mean, part of this is of course motivated by the Combine race themselves, or the Union. It is very possible the original Combine race is not really alive anymore, but the Universal Union kind of serves, or it operates with like inertia, sort of. And that is obviously to expand their power, but this expansion is mostly also to, it does give the species a much better unified purpose. It basically treats the species as a resource to be harvested, and not wasted. Which, I mean, we would be wasted otherwise, and we are going to be, since obviously the Combine doesn't really exist in real life, but if they would, we are essentially a resource that what if it could go to waste, So, to basically put it in a simple terms, they do give us a purpose by actually integrating us into the Universal Union and helping us have some sort of impact on giving every species in the universe a clear purpose.
Have turned our eyes toward the stars. Let me assure you that the suppressing field will be shut off on the day that we have mastered ourselves, the day we can prove we no longer need it. And that day of transformation, I have it on good authority, is close at hand.
Yeah, so here that Dr. Breen said that the suppression field will be shut off when we can prove ourselves that we are reliable enough to not have to be constrained. When we prove that we are reliable enough to be able to control ourselves and overcome the compulsions. Look at that fly-ass APC.
Let me read a letter I recently received. Dear Dr. Breen,
So yes, it basically repeats.
Reproductive cycle. Sincerely, a concerned citizen. Thank you for writing. Concerned.
So that is basically a video I wanted to make to explain, or at least not explain, but more like provide my take on the Dr. Breen speeches, and to also maybe help you understand it, like translate it more into human terms so you can understand it, and maybe actually align yourself with these views as well, or at least view them as viable. These goals that the Combine is trying to present,
First, let us consider the fact that for the first time ever, as a species, immortality...
And for the first time ever as a species, immortality is in our reach.
This simple fact has...
Once again, that is true, because once again, under the Combine's rule, we would essentially become immortal, just like the Combine. I mean, the Combine is immortal, and so are most of the like on the species scale. Obviously, we're not talking about individuals, but we are talking about the entire group of the species becomes immortal because the Combine eventually finds a way to keep them in existence, even if the main means of reproduction are completely disabled or removed. And I would say that finding a way to produce, humans without relying on themselves fucking each other. Sorry to put it bluntly, but I'm kind of cynical at this point, of humans. Basically, to put it more professionally, they could find a way to basically keep humanity in existence
its own
and
oppressor.
by other means than just local reproduction, which, as you probably know, is paralyzing because of the underlying mechanisms that are driving it. If you know what I mean.
Tooth and nail, beginning with the basis of human urge. The urge to we should thank the factors for giving us respite, this overpowering force. They have thrown a switch and exercised our demons in a single stroke. They have given us the strength we never could have summoned
So yes,
to overcome this compulsion. They have given us purpose. They have turned our eyes toward the stars. Let me assure you that the suppressing field will be shut off.
I suppose I guess the screens as well.
Mastered
Combine,
the day we
scissors,
can
17 MP, that probably says for Metropolis, right?
that
Yeah.
day of transformation, I have it on good authority, is close at hand.
Anyways, that's pretty much all I have to say, right? And yes, that's all I wanted to do in this video, to provide my take and my views on the Breencast regarding Instinct. Well, and as always, thanks for watching, and for now, goodbye.